I guess you could say that this movie was the bomb. I don't know. I don't have anything too complex for this one. I guess that it was a funny one. I think it was a funny one. I'll give it that. It was a little obvious, but either way, last night I watched Oppenheimer.
Four, three.
I could tell you one thing right now about this movie of why it's such a big deal. Oppenheimer is the next Christopher Nolan movie. Period. People are going to go see that. He's one of the only directors right now that can make an original story and get people to the theater entirely based on his name. And looking at the box office for this movie, it seems like that's going to be the case again. Although, who knows if that actually has to do with Barbenheimer or whatever. I've got a hot take about Christopher Nolan. Yes, he's an incredible filmmaker and writer and director and all of that. But while I do, well, actually, I really only like one of his Batman movies, and that's The Dark Knight. But I think he's at his best when he's telling original stories, or at least stories that are based on true events, like Dunkirk and this one. And even looking at my list of Christopher Nolan movies ranked on my Letterboxd account, the three Batman movies are at the bottom for me, which I think making that list, I did not realize it was going to be like that, but here we are. I'm also a good fan of biopics. I like history. I wasn't really good at it in school, but I'm a good fan of history. I like learning stuff that is like a blind spot for me in history. And I wouldn't call World War II a blind spot for me personally, but the idea of who Oppenheimer was and how he worked as a person and like his involvement in the making of the atomic bomb was a blind spot for me. So I was excited to learn more about this. And this may be having to wait a little bit because I thought, oh yeah, I can sit down and get my review out on Friday or at least early Saturday morning, like midnight or something. But I needed to sit with this one, and I kind of figured that would be the case. The movie overall covers a pretty huge chunk of Oppenheimer's life. It goes from his academics when he was attending lectures led by Niels Bohr to his involvement in the Manhattan Project, and then the fallout of everything that happened in World War II, especially with being accused as a communist in his past. And for this being 3 hours on the dot, I believe, there's a lot to cover in this, and it never really felt overwhelming, which was a nice surprise because I'm also not good at physics. This being a movie about J. Robert Oppenheimer, there's a lot of physics talk in this. I actually saw it with a buddy of mine who knows physics, and it felt like I think he was able to follow it a little bit more, but since I was not good at science in general, let alone physics, it took a minute for me to like get into what he was talking about, and at least from that aspect, I might have to give this another watch just to like know what they're talking about. At least from a scientific angle. The structure of the movie itself was actually pretty interesting. It jumped around a lot from a little bit of before the Manhattan Project, because the whole movie surrounds the Manhattan Project. It makes the most sense for it to be that. We're hopping around from around in time to like when Oppenheimer was a student to after, and then maybe after Manhattan Project, and then we'll go mainly into Manhattan Project, which is a huge chunk of the movie. And it's actually similar to a documentary, but if it were like if it were edited by Tarantino. Yeah, I know Tarantino's like an easy comparison, but we hop around in time. That's like the best comparison I can give. And on top of all the time hopping, there's a whole new aspect to this where there are some scenes that are shot in color, some are shot in black and white. I'm pretty sure that an IMAX camera specifically filmed for black and white was made for this movie. According to Christopher Nolan, all the scenes in color are subjective scenes, mainly focusing on Oppenheimer and all the different conversations he had. So those parts are taking a little bit of creative liberty in terms of, what was said, how was saying it, all that stuff. The scenes in black and white, Christopher Nolan called them objective. A lot of these scenes are in trials, mainly after the Manhattan Project, which focus on Robert Downey Jr.'s role, Louis Strauss. And these were open trials and hearings in the Senate for when he was trying to be confirmed to be a member of the cabinet, I believe. Honestly, I could have boiled it down to just color is Oppenheimer's point of view, and black and white is Strauss's point of view. But knowing that there is an actual distinction on why those were chosen in terms of historical accuracy, I think it's a cool idea. Now we're gonna go through the cast, mainly because there are so many fucking people in this movie. I feel like I'm gonna sit here for an hour if I talk about every single person that's in this movie. So, I'm just gonna say this. Everybody did a great job in this. I'm gonna talk about the main cast, at least the names that are on the poster for this movie, because those are a representation of who the main characters are in the movie, or at least the most impactful ones. And I'm also gonna throw in a couple names that I thought they did great with what they had in the few scenes they had. Cillian Murphy is easily the first guy we have to talk about. He's playing Oppenheimer here. And knowing that he has worked with Christopher Nolan for a pretty long time, and this is his first leading role in what feels like forever, and it's the first time in a Nolan film, he brings his A game. Man, there is this haunting feeling, especially in the scenes leading up to the A-bomb explosion, and also everything after it. Murphy is nailing every piece of, like, guilt and moral turmoil that Oppenheimer went through after all this, and the fact that it's Cillian Murphy doing this, one of the best actors working, and he's just doing his thing. He's in pretty much every scene in the movie, maybe except for two. And the fact that he is nailing it across the board in every second he has on the screen is nothing short of incredible. And I'm gonna put money on it that I'm pretty sure he's gonna win the Oscar. Speaking of Oscars, my personal pick for Best Supporting Actor is Robert Downey Jr. playing Louis Strauss. God damn, he is honestly playing against type for what he normally plays, even outside of Tony Stark. He is a very cold and manipulating man, and that is just very far from what he usually plays in his career, and it's weird using this term, but I really do think it is a tour de force performance from Robert Downey Jr. Honestly, I hope he wins at this point, but although I do think Cillian Murphy will win for this. Emily Blunt is in this as well. She plays Oppenheimer's wife, Kitty, and honestly, I was just hoping that she got more to do in this. She has a lot of good emotional moments in terms of finding out things about Oppenheimer's life. I probably shouldn't spoil this since it's a movie, it's a new movie, but it's history. If you want to know, you can just look it up. But I'm not gonna spoil Oppenheimer because spoiling history, I think it's weird. Anyway, Emily Blunt nails the emotional performances that I think a role like this should get. I wouldn't be surprised if she's nominated as well. I've warmed up to Matt Damon over the years. I wasn't really a giant fan of him like a couple years ago, but he started to warm up to me, and I really enjoyed him in this. He plays Leslie Groves. He's a general for the military that helps Oppenheimer, and hires Oppenheimer for the Manhattan Project. And it's not a comedic movie, but Matt Damon has some funny moments that help us breathe during the really tense moments of the movie, and then went right back into the intensity of whatever scene was happening. So it was nice to have Matt Damon in a role like that where he just nailed the timing on it. The last main cast member that was on the poster and being pushed as a lead for the movie was Florence Pugh, who plays Jean Tatlock, and she did a great job. I think she should have been in it more, just because I like Florence Pugh. But obviously real life things happened with Jean Tatlock, and she did great with what she did. I wouldn't be surprised if she was nominated either. The couple other actors I'd like to mention in this is, the first one is Josh Hartnett. He plays a professor at the school that Oppenheimer starts teaching at before he gets the Manhattan Project. I'm gonna be honest, I meant to put down who he plays in this, but I completely forgot to, and I can't remember his name. But honestly, it's been a while since we've seen Josh Hartnett in anything, so he did a good job. I'd also like to shout out Jason Clarke. He plays a prosecutor in the trials, in Oppenheimer's closed door trial where He's like, we're going through his whole life, which is around like what the whole movie's framed of. Jason Clarke is in pretty much all of those scenes, and they're peppered throughout the movie, so it could feel like he's in it a lot, although he's not really on screen a bunch. And especially in like the finale, the final scene of the trial, he does an incredible job, and he is just bouncing off of Cillian Murphy incredibly well. If he had a bigger role, I would also maybe nominate him for supporting actor, but mainly because I'm pretty sure Robert Downey Jr. is going to get all the love for this. So I'm fine with I'm fine with putting like the shout out mention to Jason Clarke, who just did good. It also wouldn't be a stretch to say, at least in my opinion, that this is probably Christopher Nolan's most technically impressive movie, like out of everything he's done. And to think that it's this when he has movies like sci-fi action epics like Inception, Interstellar, and Tenet, knowing that this is probably his best looking and best directed movie as a whole is very impressive, and I'm pretty sure Christopher Nolan's gonna get like a directing nomination for this. In the interviews leading up to it, Christopher Nolan had emphasized the fact that there's no CGI in this movie, which is true to an extent. Yeah, they actually set off a bomb for the atomic bomb scene, and it looked wild. But also, CGI and VFX are two different things. There are no CGI shots in this to my knowledge, but there are a couple of visual effects that are sprinkled in through it for like visual effect. That's not including the bomb. I'm not gonna like talk about that other stuff. I think if you've seen the trailer for this movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. Also, the music, man, just Ludwig Göransson is really good at what he does. And if he becomes the new Christopher Nolan, like, combo after Hans Zimmer really just hasn't worked with him recently, that'd be fantastic. He's killing it in this. I won't be surprised if this gets nominated for Best Score. I guess those are my full thoughts on Oppenheimer. I think this is one of the best movies of the year, and it is a haunting look into one of history's darkest periods and how, like, guilt and moral torment and politics as well can tear a man into two, and that man is J. Robert Oppenheimer. As I said, I think this is Nolan's most impressive movie from a technical perspective, and the fantastic performances across the board, but especially Cillian Murphy and Robert Downey Jr. They don't carry the movie in a sense, but they heighten the movie in a way that honestly should be considered an achievement for a movie of this scale and an original story, since it's based on real life. It's not based on a property. But the fact that it ended up being this good is incredible. I'm going to give Oppenheimer a 10 out of 10. If you didn't know that already, I think this is Christopher Nolan's, like, a top 3 movie of his, maybe even his best if it holds up on another watch, which, knowing what he's made, really says something. Alright, my question for you is, have you seen Oppenheimer? What did you think about it? Did you think it was too long? Honestly, I'll throw another wrench in there. What did you see first? Did you see Oppenheimer first or Barbie first? Honestly, I'm pretty busy this weekend, so I am going to have to wait to see Barbie in a couple of days, but I will get and see it as soon as possible and get a video out for you guys. So, let me know what you think of Oppenheimer in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video. See ya!